Hi, I'm Shivani Poddar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fashion House High Street Essentials. We run two brands, FabAlley in India, and I'm very, very excited to be here today with Akshay and all of you.
It's the year 2011. Shivani Poddar is a young and successful working professional in her early 20s. She's working with an investment bank helping startups to raise funds. And then she realizes that there is no easy way for her to buy smart office wear online or even offline. This insight led to the birth of FabAlley, which is today among the leading D2C fashion brands in India. In this episode of the Founder Thesis podcast, immerse yourself in the decade long journey of building a large D2C fashion business, starting from an era when fundraising was next to impossible and founders literally had to survive each day with nothing but their grit and hustle. Your host Akshay Dutt interviews Shivani Poddar, the founder of FabAlley, about this roller coaster ride and in the process learns about what makes a D2C fashion business scale up. Stay tuned and subscribe to the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app to go behind the headlines and hear the real stories of making a startup scale up.
So I think for those few years, all I wanted to do was become an investment banker, which I did. So I worked with the vendors and, was a very happy, banker there. But I think always,
What were you doing exactly? Like
so
M&A?
I was, yeah, the M&A side. And fundraise, at that time in the country, this is 2010, 11, 12, early years, they were also early years generally, right? So there was something happening in tech, little bit e-commerce had started coming up, but otherwise, some large deals, but nothing, there's no ecosystem like it is today. So mostly on the M&A side at that point. So while I was, of course, a banker, and I was actually, even with the super strenuous, crazy lifestyle that investment banking has, I was quite, I think I was quite happy. And that's who I am. I like working long hours. I like working weekends. So it was something that kind of quite energized me. And always thought that, till I become an entrepreneur, which in my mind was at least, say, 10 years, post at that point, I would continue to do banking, and that's where I was. And then one day, me and my co-founder Tanvi, we started talking, and we were like,
You were
both
like
young.
work friends or like how did
We
you
were no,
two?
we were friends since we were kids. So we kind of grew up together, went to the same school, lived in Delhi. So essentially, so we knew each other. We were friends for a very long time. And we were actually really as young working professionals. I was in Bombay. She was in Bangalore at that time. As young professionals, really just started talking like, where is fashion in this country? And that was the first line and the first conversation as consumers to say that, where do we shop from? We want to look good. We have a general kind of sense of, what's happening around the world. But in India, nothing is available. And that was the first need that we identified. Nothing to do from a business point of view. I could have never ever thought that I'd be a fashion entrepreneur. Absolutely no sense of fashion design. And, everybody asks me, oh, you're a designer. And I'm like, no, I have absolutely no sense of design, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that was the first kind of conversation. And the more I thought about it over those few months, and I started working on e-commerce transactions by then at a vendors. And the more I would meet entrepreneurs, and these were all young people like me, right? Like mid-20s, late 20s.
What kind of
Everybody
people
wanted.
were you meeting? Did you meet Falguni Nayak by any chance? Like,
I
well,
didn't. I didn't actually.
okay.
I didn't meet
Yeah.
her, but these were,
Mm.
some of those companies actually don't exist today. But these were, a lot of everybody was starting out, right? 2012, 13, like those years. I think a lot of companies were just starting. Those that don't exist and do exist today, mostly those, all of them started in that 3-4 year, range. So
Like
yeah,
Clovian also started around that time, I guess.
Sylvia started then in fashion. There were players like Yepme, Sophie,
Fashion and
Tokajab,
you
and like that.
also.
Fashion and
Mm.
you, they were crazy. There was crazy. There was lots of companies. Sugar started then. So I mean, lots of companies had started. Different sectors. Lenskart, First Cry. I mean, you name it, and you'll see that the timing it's all in those 2-3 years. So essentially, so everybody who wanted to do something realized that probably there is something getting built, and there was so much energy in just thinking that it's new. And we were also seeing parallels at that time, right? So For example, in fashion in UK, there were companies like Boohoo, ASOS. Those had already seen 7, 8 years, and they were, so while in India it was very new, but globally, this was where they were at 2003, 4, 5. We had reached that point. So I think even for me, while I was doing a lot of comp work and I was working on transactions, I could see that globally this is happening. And it's a matter of time that, we're gonna kind of, yeah. So first year we did about 3 crores. And this is in about 6 months that year, because we didn't get a full financial year. And I was, of course, it was not a big sum, but it was still, we were okay. I think we were just getting
Right, no,
started.
it's a phenomenal sum for like a completely bootstrapped venture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That time we didn't have money, and actually the next year after that, actually we did 15 crores with again no funding,
Wow.
and I think this was just by shifting gears from accessories to apparel, and like I said, no money, just basic investment from Tanvi and me, and yeah, that was the first bit. But I think we found the right space early on. I think that's what I would think that was helpful.
Tell me the journey of the apparel launch. Like, how did you, like, did you want to curate or did you want to design, build, sell?
So we've never been in the curation model. Again, actually, the thought's been you can't build something meaningful if you do what everybody else is doing, which means if I curate, anybody can curate, right? It's very difficult to kind of build differentiation unless you're building a marketplace. So for a brand, it's almost impossible. So never wanted to curate, always wanted to design. Now, Tanvi, we neither of us were designers because we were both business graduates.
What
So
was
what we
Tanvi's
did,
background?
she comes from a marketing background. So she, after doing her MBA from Micah, she was working with Titan as a brand manager. So both of
So
us
she understood
pretty,
consumer marketing.
she understood the consumer side, and also was also always better at design than I was. So this is what we did. So we said we want to launch 50 styles. No idea how to design. Of course, we didn't know how to make a pattern or sketch or do all of those things. So we bought 50 products from exactly the company I told you, ASOS. So we bought 50 garments and we copied them. And we said that let's make the pattern to the best of our ability. We went to the fabric market in Delhi, picked up fabrics that were available, 100 meters basically, and married the two.
The Chandni Chowk,
And
you went.
yeah, yeah, Chandni Chowk, Nehru Place, Gandhinagar. We would go ourselves. We would walk on fabrics. It's a crazy place. So we bought that and we married the two. And I would pretty much sit at the factories where the stitching is done. And this is now you have to imagine, right? Tailors. This is not like a great job where you're sitting in an office. So 20, 30 tailors and
And this was your parents'
just
factory? Like, they were running an export house, right?
this wasn't my parents' factory. These were some local job work units that here
Okay.
and there in Noida they identified. And
But your
this was
parents would have at least given you that market
yeah,
knowledge
yeah,
of
yeah,
where
they
to
did
get things
support
done,
us.
where to
Absolutely,
source
absolutely. They
from.
did support us, where to source from, where to go, and I think that support in the first few years and even till date continues to kind of be invaluable. So yeah, so they did support us, but we had to get the job done, right? So I would go and just stand there for days and days and weeks and just kind of get the production done. And those were the first. So we launched exactly 50 styles, and those were the first 50 styles, which were designs from ASOS, fabrics from Chandni Chowk on Hero Place, and combined the two. And when we launched that, which was around April 2013, and while for accessories, if we were getting like maybe 20 orders a day or 30 orders a day, like the minute we shifted to apparel, it became like say 70 or 80 or 100, and which is how we saw the growth right within that 1 year. And
What kind of clothes were you selling? Like t-shirts, shirts,
this
or
is
formal
yeah,
wear?
yeah,
Like,
Western wear, tops, dresses, more casual from a women's wear
like
perspective.
smart
So
casuals.
smart casuals, yeah. So we did that, and yeah, and that was the first lot. And then from there, we just knew this is it, and we have to do more of this.
How did you I'm guessing the key thing here is scaling up supply, right? Like, because you also realize that India doesn't have that supply in place. The demand is there. More women are working. So how did you scale up supply? Like, am I right in my understanding that supply was the key challenge to solve?
So I think Akshay was both ways because demand for e-com, while retail was about 99.9%, of the channel at that time, like of the overall segment. online was very small. So even from a demand point of view, you had to tell women to come online and shop, right? Because you weren't sure of your sizes. Returns were not half as smooth as they are today. So you had to really educate them as to why they should go online and buy at all and not to the closest store. And that was something that, it took us a lot of kind of marketing push, branding in a certain way, talking to the consumer to be able to tell them that you don't like the product, we'll take it back, right? And but at least, go and try it. So that is something that I think even on the demand side, and hence there was of course a lot that had to be done. But supply, yes, I think there was, again, ecosystem was poor. Like, people, there was nothing called a large domestic market. People would usually, everybody in Noida, they were exporters. And I probably met hundreds, and they would be like, they wouldn't even entertain us. They would be like, if you want to make like 50 pieces per garment, please, just like get out of my office right now. Like,
It's too
really,
small.
that
Like they have a
it's too
minimum
small.
order quantity
Minimum
requirement.
minimum of thousands of pieces per style. And they're like, you're looking at 15, there's no way, right? And then, we were also young. They would look at Tanvi and me typically and be like, you young girls, why are you wasting our time? And that is something that I have heard and I continue to hear that actually. So that's something that I've heard for so many years that, they'd look at me and they would be like, I don't think we can, we don't sell here. This is not a retail shop. Like, so many deep feelings. So
Okay.
there would be places I would go to, say in Surat or these kind of places, and they would actually tell me and my team, who were all kind of young girls, to be like, we don't retail here. This is not a wholesale. This is a wholesale shop. So please, ma'am, leave. And then I would explain the business to them that we're not here to shop. So I think so those kind of things, like I said, continues to happen. But I think
So
in the first
it was, I'm guessing, like a very male dominated kind of an
It
industry
is.
of
It is.
these
I mean, you
people
will
who
very
make the
rarely see.
garments.
Yeah, yeah, you will very rarely see a woman running a factory. I mean, it's just not that business. Or even on the fabric side, all the large people or all everybody who supplies fabric, they 100% male. Like that's
Even the
just
tailors would all be males only.
sorry.
Even the tailors would all be males, like the people
100%.
working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody. So the whole ecosystem. And, it's such a funny incident that, once 5, 6 years back, I went to Surat, which is basically the hub for fabrics in India. And, I was there and there are these buildings which have lots of wholesale kind of garment shops. And, me and another two colleagues, so three of us, we were kind of walking through. And I actually, we would have entered 50 stores, and probably from every store we heard, this is not a retail store. This is not a retail store.
The moment you
And
saw women walking, they thought
everybody,
you're
50
shopping.
young women, they're like, they have for shopping. And in those buildings where there were like maybe 5,000 men in each building, I didn't see a single woman except the three of us. And we from Delhi, we of course, just kind of the way we are, the way we dress, and they were like amazed. And then one of our vendors told us, let me send like two bodyguards with you guys because you can't enter these places without men. And I was amazed. And I think from then till now, it's just been 5, 6 years. I do see a difference still in terms of how they kind of treat and respect women. But so many years, I was amazed that this can happen.
So how did you like set up your like how did that one order of 50 which you kind of like bootstrapped it and did it very manually, how did that become into a like a well-oiled machinery? Like did
Yeah,
you
so I can, sorry, go on, actually.
and like did you set up your own manufacturing or did you set up a reliable part chain of suppliers and vendors and third party manufacturers, or like how did that become a well-oiled machine with?
Yeah, so I think we starting essentially, so in fashion, how it works is that we have to kind of churn out new designs every month. So it's not that, you make 10 styles or make 10, kind of products from a lifestyle perspective, or, 10 face creams, and then you can sell it for like 2 years. So once we identified the styles that were working, we said that all right, every month we'll make 30, 40, 50, 80, depending on the season. We'll keep kind of making those styles. And initially, for a long time, those styles were made based on the same model, which means we were ordering clothes as references because we could afford to get our own tailors and our own pattern masters, etc. So we would be like, let's order those clothes, let's make the fabric. So we continue to kind of focus on this machinery, which we could see was getting a little bit better and better. Also, since our own volumes were increasing, like so, for example, earlier I could only make 20 pieces per style. I could now make 50 and 80. So just by virtue of that, suddenly people started becoming maybe a little bit more interested than they were. Plus, of course, my parents, since they were in the garment business, so I really requested them if they could kind of support us for the first 3-4 years and get like say 20-30 machines just for us, that would be helpful. So as a combination of these 2-3 things, I think those were that was the first the how we kind of set things up. But we never really ever set up our own manufacturing. Because again, something that I understood was that, if I'm in the business, like if I'm in the retail business, I don't want to be in the manufacturing business because they're two different businesses the way they are. Absolutely. So the back end, if you have to do that, and I have to manage, like, today maybe we've got 3,000, 4,000 tailors, got to manage that, then cannot be doing, cannot be selling, at the front end in the business that we're in. So I think never kind of fully set up the back end, except we found enough people who wanted to work with us over time. And every year, actually, we were doubling, right? So, I mean, I think also for a lot of vendors, I would just sit with them and tell them that this is our journey, we're starting, and, support us, right? If today you're giving us 500 meters, tomorrow it's going to become a few thousand. There are some vendors who've been with us for years now, just because, at that point they supported us, and now there's such high loyalty that they've been with us for in this entire journey of us growing. So I think I've been fortunate to find those people, fortunate that my parents were there to support. And I think, like I said, as a combination, we were able to scale.
What are the machines that you're talking about that what is I mean, where do machines come in? I thought it was tailors making clothes, right? Like,
Yeah, so tailors hem stitching machine. So
that
essentially,
machine.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So those machines, and then there are a bunch of other tools that you need for garmentry. So it's a
Mm.
combination of all of that.
Okay. Okay. So you basically work with a lot of small shops which have 20, 30, 50 tailors who will.
Yes, actually, it's like
Okay.
whoever wants to work with us. So they could even have 5 machines. I would be like, you want to work with us, please do. Right? Because, when you're in that place, and our demand was probably like 3 or 4x of our supply for a very long time in 2014, 15, because because we were making small lots, it was very difficult to find people to work with us. Quality, sizing, apparel is very, very complicated, right? From the fits have to be perfect. So essentially, so we were not able to, so for a very long time. Why? Because e-commerce, like once Myntra opened up and marketplaces opened up in 2014, 15, then e-commerce really started booming. And a lot of, there was a lot more acceptance, and at that time, we were the largest brand on Myntra because, there was, it was a new ecosystem, so much demand, and we really couldn't keep up. So I think those 2 years, I mean, but that's, I think I always look back and tell myself it's always a better place to be in, where your demand is a lot more than a lot more than the supply than the other way. So yes, we were okay, and then we started, like, so we were, like I said, working with anybody who wanted to work with us. Like anybody would come to an office and be like, I have 5 machines, I want to work. I would be like, let's do it. So that's how we were expanding at that time.
And how did you maintain consistency in quality? Because if you have so many different vendors doing it, that risk of inconsistent product is there, right? Like,
Yeah, so that was there. And we were, there were a lot of cases when we would make the wrong product. Somebody would cut the wrong fabric. We had to reject the entire style. Very complicated. And it was very challenging because there were times when we would give, pieces like say 100 pieces, 200 pieces, and the vendors cut the wrong fabric for the wrong style. And I can't do anything, right? These are manual human mistakes. And also because we hadn't raised too much capital. We just done by then we done kind of one angel round from Indian Angel Network. It was about 1.5 crores. It wasn't like any kind of big amount. And so we had to be very capital conscious in terms of, how we were kind of scaling up. So these small hits were also huge, but quality was a concern, and ensuring consistency was a concern. And we would do manual checks. So I would, once we would get pieces in house, I was happy to do, out of 50% checks myself, like take out the garment, see if it looks okay. Again, not a technical person. I couldn't check like 100 things, but I could see and say if this garment's going to look okay and fit okay. And I think if that could pass, like it could pass my eye, we were broadly okay. That this is going to be okay. And again, this is a time when we could afford quality checkers, we could afford like top quality people. So this was all done like really done based on common sense. I'm a consumer. If I think it's looking okay, I would assume most women would think it's looking okay.
Mhm. So 2016, you raised your first big round, right? Like a
Yeah.
$2 million Series A. So by that time, what kind of numbers were you doing? Like, what was your?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So we were by then almost at about 1.5, 2 crores a month. So I think the year that we raised capital, we closed at about 25 crores net sales, broadly about 35 on GMV. And by then, and even because I've been a banker, my thought was also to say that we don't want to get like large funds early on. which is the exact reason why we didn't get anybody sooner than that. And, get to basically a minimum level of traction, ensure the product market fit is kind of broadly proven, and then look at raising money. So that's exactly what we did. So by then we'd reached a good scale, and from the 6 years back, at that point it was probably amongst the largest kind of online first women's wear companies, and we were like, things are looking good, and it's time to get a good fund, and found amazing partners in Anand. So I think and India Quotient. So yeah, so that was the first capital raise that we did.
Uh, what was your pitch to them that the total addressable market is massive here, more people will move online and
Yeah, so someone reminds me, Akshay, of my plan that I'd presented. Someone, in fact, one of the investors reminded me, a few weeks back, was to say that this is about, it's of course a 5 billion plus opportunity, and it's a massive market, and we can reach $1 billion in like 4 years from now. So that's essentially what my pitch was, which also said we're going to go from zero to like 500 stores in 3 years or 4 years. And it was so funny because, one is so naive, right? Like, it was early, we had not raised any capital. And my thought was that if without any money we can get here, then of course, if we have a couple of million in the bank, then there's absolutely no reason for us to, quickly scale. So that was the pitch. Yes, it was to say that, we are going to build the largest brand, and this market is, there's nothing here. And it looks super attractive. So yeah, that was a pitch. And I did pitch to, I think if I remember correctly, like in a parallel way, but maybe at least 30, 40 investors. And of course, every time we would pitch, this is women's fashion, right? So we would pitch, they would be like, okay, how do you differentiate? I would be like, okay, how do I explain to you that why is my dress different than the dress that your wife wears or your girlfriend wears or your secretary is wearing right now? Super challenging. And at the end of one hour, they would say, okay, I will talk to my one of these secretary slash girlfriend slash wife. I will ask them to order. I will take their feedback. And if they like it, we will get back. And I was like, exactly this, in this order. And every time I would be like, seriously, like, I sat here last 60 minutes, told you everything we're doing about supply chain, fast fashion. You're telling me I'm going to ask my secretary to order and I'll come back to you then. So yeah, so I mean, that's what happens when there are no women in the VC industry, right? Everybody who's building a business that's super, super women oriented, I mean, if you're not in the TG, you don't understand the product, right? Fundamentally. So yeah, so lots of pitches at that time. Every single pitch to men. And in India Quotient, we found a partner who was a woman, Prerna. And I think that's what changed things for us.
wow, amazing. Okay. How did you solve the logistics and returns issue? Like that ecosystem was not there, right? Like today, there are a lot of like third party services and you can just plug them in. But at that time, how did you solve that?
No, so I think even then there were basic things like, I mean, picking up the product from the customer's house. Those kind of facilities had started. The other thing that we did is we wanted to ensure that if people are returning products, like why are they returning it, right? And how can we improve the fits for future? So from a process orientation perspective, we were able to kind of pick up products from people's house using a third party logistics guy.
Mhm.
And
You're
we
working
started
with
a
courier companies basically
courier
to
company. Yeah, yeah.
deliver, pick
And we
up all of that.
Absolutely. And we started an in-house return center very early on in our journey, wherein anything that was coming in, we were really looking at it, doing 100%, like 100% check to say that why is this returned? Is that, and taking that data from consumers. So is there a size? Is there a pattern? And then we would use that data to ensure that in future, at least one, that product is fixed, and the future from a sizing perspective, we keep correcting that. So that data we started collecting, which we continue to do till date and act on it essentially. So that was something that we were collecting. But yeah, returns, in this industry is huge actually. Like for women's, for example, on Myntra, for women's wear, it's at about 35% return. Now, if one third of your products are coming back, then of course your logistics costs, all your costs, kind of your P&L goes to the toss. So that is a challenge that everyone's facing in the women's wear space. But again, I mean, lots of things happening from our end, at least around how can we improve design, how can we improve size charts, how can we tell people what size they should wear, etc., to improve this experience.
Okay. Okay. So you told investors that this is like a fast fashion opportunity. What does it mean to be fast fashion, and as opposed to what like?
Yeah. So, fast fashion, I think the basic, I mean, what fast fashion means is that there are two, three things. Like there are two metrics for fast fashion. One is that your turnaround is super quick, which is to say that I'm launching hundreds of styles every month, and this number could be 100 for somebody. It could be as much as 5,000 for somebody like a Shein, for example. So I'm launching hundreds of styles on a monthly basis, and I'm launching it based on small quantities. So 100 styles, 550 pieces, 10,000 styles, 100 pieces, depending on your scale. And fundamentally, from a consumer sentiment perspective, it is to say, if I either buy it now, otherwise I'm not going to get it. So that is essentially what that's the first metric of fast fashion. And the second is on saying that how can I be so quick to the market that if a trend is spotted, right? Like there are runways and a trend is spotted, I can put that trend on the shelf or on my website in like say 2 weeks. So there's Paris Fashion Week happening. You see what the designers are doing, and you're able to translate that in 2 weeks and put it on the shelf. Now, when we started talking about that in India, that did not exist. There was you would go and talk to vendors, they would be like, "Okay, I will give this to you in 120 days." And
Yeah.
I would be like, "Where do I do in 120 days? Because it's going to be everywhere by then." And we would tell them, "No, we want it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks." And that thought itself was so bizarre to most people in India, and especially Noida and where we worked, right? And they would be like, "This is impossible, and these girls are crazy." So that is basically exactly what we would hear all the time, and which is when we started saying, can we do some part of it ourselves? Which is, if vendors can't turn it around, what do I need to do it? So some part of the ecosystem actually over time, which is buying fabrics, making quick design turnaround, all of that we started moving in house. So over time, while we were buying kind of outright or end to end from outside, we started essentially in housing techniques so that we could move to this fast fashion model because nobody in India could do it.
So this 2 million fundraise would have helped you bring more things in house, like once you did that.
100%, 100%. I mean, till then we were, we'd hardly raised 500,000. We were absolutely running like we were 25, 30 of us doing a 15, 20, 25 crore turnover. And literally, I think I was probably, working 7 days and 14 hours a day and also loving it. So, when I was a banker, I thought like if I could work like this as a banker, like there is nothing that could be more difficult or challenging. And then I became an entrepreneur. And then I was like, okay, I think, when you're in a job or you're a banker, you can still sleep for 5 or 6 hours peacefully. But when you're an entrepreneur, and especially I think in the first few years till you kind of set, that's all. Like it's life, right? Like and it continues to be till date. But especially for the first 5 6 years, I think that's all that I could think of. And I was, and you gave Falguni's example, right? So, and I was just thinking that for me, because I didn't have anything else, right? I was not married, I didn't have kids, I didn't have anything else. It was just so natural. I could do it all day, all night. I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure it's super challenging for people who do have like other responsibilities to be an entrepreneur in the early years. And I was lucky that I did it when I was super young and I didn't have to think of anything else except work. And that kind of kept me going. Otherwise, I don't know how many times I would have thought of like going back to a vendors and being like, should I get my job back?
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me how you utilize that $2 million. Like, did you start hiring designers? Like, did you start keeping an inventory of fabric and all of that in house, or like?
Yeah. So actually, we did two large things which we had not done till then. One was that till then we only had one brand, which was called FabAlley, which was our Western wear brand, which is the brand that we started with. And we had also started identifying kind of spaces in the ethnic wear market. Again, as consumers, to say that where is the brand which is say today's modern ethnic wear brand, right? Every brand that existed has been there for decades. It was a brand that I could go to, my mom could go to, my grandmom could go to, and that does not happen in Western wear, right? So we said that where are the new age ethnic wear brands? Those didn't exist. And can we build something there? So I think we couldn't have moved till we had capital because, of course, when you're on 500,000, you can't do everything. So after we did this round, we started our second brand, which is called India, INDYA, which is our ethnic wear brand. And India today is actually the larger part of our business, grown extremely well over the last 5 years. And that is something that we identified. So that was the first thing that we used the capital for, to say that let's do what we've been wanting to do, which is start India and start branched off family in India, separate kind of Western and ethnic wear brands. So that was the first big use of capital. And that also helped us then again scale from this 25 to next year 50 to 90. So the journey post 2016, 17 has been till COVID happened. And I'm sure you'll get to that. But But till then, those 3, 4 years were essentially just doubling revenues every year by doing, by adding this. So one was India. The other thing which we changed was we started offline. So for the first 5 years of our journey, we were only online, only selling through our website and marketplaces. And now we had capital to be able to say that can we try 3, 4 stores? Can we go to some large format stores, say like, say a Shopper, Central, some of these and start that. And, by then we'd also reached say, about 45, 50 crores in revenue. And I knew that, continuing this journey only online is offline was 98, 97, 98% of the market at that time was was going to restrict scale at some point. So we said that while it was new for us, it was offline is a completely different business. It's a completely different way of thinking. But we said we've got to learn it and we've got to start that journey. So 2017, after our fundraise, we started offline as well. So now we had FabAlley, we had India, we had online, and we had offline. And that's how essentially the business started growing from there on.
Okay, okay. So India was also fast fashion, but your products would have been like, say, salwar kameez and like that kind of casual Indian wear, not
Yeah.
like marriage stuff.
So it was actually it was exactly the married stuff. Basically,
Oh,
the not the
okay.
married stuff, was the festive stuff.
Mhm.
And why we did that was because we said that, while in the day wear segment, which is kurtas, what you wear to work, there were players, right? There were players like W. Biba, etc., who were scaled up, who were doing okay. And then we said, but in the festive space, not marriage, but festivity, celebrations, in that space, there is nobody in the country. It's only unorganized. So if you want to buy something, we'll go to your neighborhood boutique, Chandni Chowk, Karol Bagh, those kind of places. So then we said that where are high street brands for festive wear? And that's where the market really existed. So what we actually did was we said what designers are giving to you at like 50,000 plus, we'll make it at 2,000, like 3,000, not copies. It's of course we 100% designed by us, but create that whole ecosystem, which is to say that, let's build really new age, very modern festive wear, which you can wear to festivals, kitty parties, pre-wedding functions, like any of those, and let it be modern and new age. So that's what India's philosophy is.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And like between these two, what is the average order value? Like what purchase from a customer, like which one gives you a higher average order value?
So India is higher because India's, it's a festive wear product, while Sabali is a more casual wear product. So India's average order value in our stores is at about 5,000. So typically people buy 2 products at a time. So that's where India is. Fabali's average order value would be at about 2,300. So that is basically, so the Fabali is a much more affordable, brand, while India is still, it's more occasion centric, and hence people are buying. They're okay to pay a little bit more because it's for occasion.
Okay. How did you build the design muscle? Because initially you told me that both of you used to like do the pattern making and the designing yourself. You must have evolved to have like, because it's your core, right? If you're releasing 50 styles a month, then you really need a strong design muscle in the organization.
Absolutely, Akshay. So we hired our first designer in 2015 and 2015, 16. And actually, so we then over time, like started building. So from one designer, today we have about 20 designers, but we started building out that muscle from then, of course, because we understood again, I mean, this whole thing around making designs by not, we had no idea, right? We were, Tanvi and I, we were not designers. So we realized that as soon as we could kind of afford to start hiring designers, we did that. They were all NIP graduates, very smart, talented designers. And so that's been the journey. So yeah, 2015, 16 is when we started. And from one designer for Fab Alley, one for India, that was the beginning. And actually, a lot of those designers that we hired then are still with us. So they've really built both the brands pretty hands on from nothing to where we're at now. And so not just design, I mean, there was a lot of muscle to be built around merchandising, sampling, converting the first product to good quality, tailoring, garmenting. So a lot of the supply chain, which is essentially the backbone for fashion, had to be built. And that we really started building after, in like I said, somewhere around 2015, 16, and kept kind of strengthening that every year.
Just help me understand like what does merchandising involve, or like you said, converting a design to a product. What does that involve, and like
Yeah.
how do you do it? Like what is your way of doing it at scale?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, it basically starts with, like, say, it's a monthly process. It starts with the mood boards and references of what's happening globally, which is to say that what are the designers doing, what are people wearing on the runway, what are people wearing from a street style perspective. So there's a lot of references that kind of come in from a mood boarding perspective. We start with mood boards, we convert them into styles, which is to say that, okay, these are my themes for this month. And I'm going to make, say, about 200 to 300 styles based on these themes. So we buy the fabrics for those. We do our own textile design. So we even make the prints ourselves, the textiles ourselves. And then we combine these two techniques, the silhouettes along with these, to make the first garment, which is all made in house. So I have my own team who makes the first garment. So now this would be hundreds of garments every month. So we make that on a monthly basis. And then we have a poll. So we really, it's not what I decide sells. It's about what people are liking. So we have about 50 girls who are our target audience in our office itself. We call them, we do a poll. We call our sales teams, we call a bunch of people, and they poll on every style. Once we've done the poll, we know what style is good, what's bad, what's selling, what's going to sell, not sell. We do buys based on that. Then will I buy like 50 pieces of a shirt or 500 or 5,000? It depends on how kind of people have liked the style. So basically, that's in a nutshell the process, and this process has to be repeated every month. And every month you have to kind of churn out 3, 4, 500 styles, and ensure that at least 250, 300 are a success from that.
Mm-hmm. Does data play a role in design here? You would be seeing what people are browsing, what they are buying, and so on and so forth. So does that data give you insights which then determines what is getting designed?
100% Akshay. So I think there are two forms of data that we kind of use. One is that as a company, we're super data led, right? Because we started online only. And when you're online first, like all your thoughts are around how can I collect maximum data and kind of improve that. So I think initially the first point of data that we get is we have our own sales data, right? For years. So I know exactly that, say, for a shirt, which is black. Now the color is black, the length is X, the collar looks is Y, the sleeve length is Z. There's this technique on that. So I have, for every product, I have 10 attributes. For every attribute, we have historical data to say black shirt in X sleeve at this price went at a sell through of say 60%, for example. So there is so much data available that what our team does is that they, on a monthly basis, put together the historical sales data and and these could run into hundreds of, say, data points and slides to say that this is what is moving, this is what is not moving, and these are the reasons based on mathematical kind of data orientation alone. That is passed on to the design team. And when they're designing, they consume a lot of that data to further design. And that is the only way to improve your design efficiency over time. So that is the first kind of data point. And the second is essentially that when we say that, because, you can't just sell what is sold. You can't make in fashion, you can't just make what is sold in the past. You have to make for the future as well. So the second data point that we get is we're able to, again, using third party tools, able to say that, for most people in the world, like say on an ASOS, what are the top 10 trending dresses in terms of views? And when we're able to say that based on new launches, what is doing well for brands across the world? And is that something that will work for India? And is that something that we should kind of also bring in? So both are on the fashion side and on our own data skills, like kind of the back end analysis. We're able to combine the two, and that's how the collections get made.
Okay. Do you double down on a design that does well, or is it fresh designs every month?
No, we double down on not on designs that do well. Actually, that's the bread and butter of the business. So things that do well, we do a lot of colorways. We do a lot of designs that look a little bit like that, but a little different. So data is, it's everything, and we use that to really kind of make more and more of what's selling, while of course always maintaining a percentage of products which are completely new and kind of never seen.
Okay, got it. You said you have a sales team. What is the sales team for? Because you're selling online, right?
So we're a combination of online and offline now, actually. So we have about 500, 550 points of sale across the country. These are our own stores, and these are with department stores like Lifestyle, Shopper Stop, Central, etc. So which is where the sales teams come in. And even for online, in fact, for like say marketplaces like Myntra, Flipkart, Amazon, we do have people who are part of the sales team. They talk to them regularly, etc. So almost 600, 700 people now who are in the sales, on the sales side.
Okay. So your retail staff is on your payroll,
They are on our
you.
payrolls, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, tell me about that getting through COVID journey.
Yeah.
2020, what was it like? What was your scale? What kind of monthly revenue were you doing? And then what happened in the next 2 years?
Yeah. So, so actually, just before so we done a Series B round from Elevation in 2018. So we had raised about, so this was overall the round was almost little less than 10 million, so about nine, 8.5, 9 million. I was combination of primary and secondary. So as a company, we never needed a lot of capital. We were capital efficient. We'd raised by then maybe about 3, 4 million. That's it. To reach, and we that year when we raised capital from Elevation, we did about 120, 130 crores in GMV. So we have already fairly scaled up, and by the time Elevation came in, it was a more steady state business. It wasn't kind of an early stage business or anyway, and kind of almost again got to this by raising a few $1 million. We not we were very very efficient on the capital side. So when COVID, and until now, by now, we were used to growing, like I was saying, 80-90%. Had never seen any other thing, any other kind of growth journey, and things were actually going quite well. India was growing very well as a brand. Our offline journey had just started 2 years back, so it was new. It was doing well. So things were looking very good. I was also expecting my son at that time. And so yeah, so I mean things were quite aligned. So I had actually planned, I'm like, I've got to ensure that like I planned the kid between fundraisers. We've done series with them. And it's like now after that, this is the first time. So yeah, so basically that, and it's the easiest, right? Because I've like meeting a bunch of investors when you're kind of 6 months pregnant. It's harder. So I was like, let's just time it perfectly. So did that. So we were so it was things were actually going quite well just before COVID, and we were all set to kind of double as we had done. And now again, we had a lot more money than we'd ever had in the history of the company. And we also had a tier one investor. So, things were looking quite positive. And so, yeah, when COVID happened, this is, of course, from, early mid March when we started discussing that, there is a possibility of kind of things shutting down, all of that. And I personally, actually, I mean, I would say that I don't think I thought in my wildest imagination that India in this country, anything will even close, even if it was happening in China and Europe, it started kind of shutting down. That we were like, in this kind of population, this is not going to happen. And, I remember sitting with the senior management team around 10th March and, and we were like, this is India, mein toh this will not happen. This is okay. I mean, of course, so we were not prepared at all because I think, I had, like I said, never imagined this was going to happen. And then when things actually did start closing, which is from mid late March, and again we thought 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. But I think the first realization that hit me, and this is when my son was he was less than 3 months old. I had a toddler, kind of an infant kid at home. Sorry, so couldn't quite and when this started sinking in, which was early April, March end, that was the first time I was like, actually, it was like my exact feeling. We had like more than 1,000 employees, and I was like, our stores are shut. We don't, while we had some capital, we definitely don't have enough money to be sitting at zero revenue, and the losses that are going to build in the next 3 months are going to probably take the company down. We don't have enough capital for that. That, and of course, really young kid at home. And so personally, I think I was just really, I was very taken aback. And I think it was probably the most challenging time that I have seen in my entire life. And not just with the company, but even personally. And as I think those 2, 3 months, while a lot of people were like, it's great to be at home. It's great to kind of take this break. I was like, this is going to take our company down. And if we don't raise more capital quickly, because I mean, one started realizing that you don't quite know till when this will last. And I think when that realization came in from April and May, that this could take longer than we'd expected, and sitting on actually the revenue action that month was zero, like actually zero, right?
Oh,
From like
okay.
you know,
Even online was like not
online was closed. Online was shut too. Yeah.
okay.
So
Okay. Because it was not essentials. You were not
it
covered
was
in
not
that
essentials.
essentials.
And we couldn't do
Okay.
masks immediately because
Mm.
I mean, the units were all shut. So I couldn't start producing that. So essentially that. So yeah, so 60 days, I think a lot of mentally challenging time. And the only thing that I think I was able to get myself to do was talk to my investors very, very candidly and tell them that, of course, like, we have some capital. It's not going to be enough. We have no idea what's happening can't even tell you. They put in money at that time in April and May in this company, which nobody knew what's going to happen to, right? So they did that. We said they were like, okay, let's do a convertible note. Let's put some money in, and we'll see how things go. So I think
It's
that's
a convertible note.
basically to say that, like, put in money today, we won't decide the valuation, and whenever we do the next funding round, we'll decide the valuation at that point. So it's so that's the only way to do a round really quickly, and you can close things. So we were able to raise some money then, and I think that was like a huge relief, because at least from a capital perspective, I knew that we'll be able to pass this time. And then the other thing, and then May and June happened, the revenue was still zero. And so then we started doing two, three things. One is that we got the license to open for masks. So we started making June, May, started making masks legally and illegally. We were like, things are shut, we'll find a way to do it. And you know what? Our company is actually called High Street Essentials, which means anything that had the word essentials was allowed to operate at that time. When we got people to use their ID cards, and when they were stopped on the road, they would just show back, and it said essentials. And we were allowed to do it.
Oh man,
Basically,
amazing.
yeah. So that's basically how we got started. We made about 50 masks quickly using the fabrics that we had, and that's what we started selling. So yeah, even if the revenue was 10, 15, 20 lakhs, it was still better than zero. So that's how we got started. And then we also
Do you
pivoted.
have to lay off because all your retail staff was like
No, we didn't. So we
just
didn't.
drag on your? I mean, I guess it's
So
just
for
more cash burns. Like,
Yeah, so for 3 months we actually didn't. I didn't have it in me as a founder to do it. Actually, we had limited money. I knew that, but I also knew that if I do it at this point, I I can't look at myself. So I think those 3 months at least, other people won't find jobs, and a lot of our people, about 600-700 people that we employ, their salaries are less than 25,000 a month. So these are people who not going to get jobs at this point. Of course, in the midst of COVID, they'll have nowhere to go, and yeah, and if I like I said, I couldn't kind of justify it to myself, so we didn't in that time. When things got better from July, which is when a few, at least online, had started opening up. Offline was still closed, till September, October. We essentially, then I knew we had to do something, because Big Bazaar, all of these people, Big Basket, Done. So all of these people had started hiring by then. So then we said that, all right, for people who we absolutely have to let go, which weren't too many, was less than 5% of our, overall workforce, we will ensure that we get we get them placed. But I also told them, I think, Akshay, that in 6 months, we're going to get the business back, and we'll offer everybody, like every person, a job back in this company. And it's up to you to take it or not, but we're going to do it. And we had to lay off like people in July. But by December, maybe, or January, I think we had given every person an offer to come. So I think that is something that I just kind of couldn't do at that point. So yeah, that was probably one of the hardest things that I have done, in addressing the whole team in that town hall. I still have memories of that, and I think that was probably one of the most challenging things of COVID.
okay, that must have been a pretty tough town hall.
It was. I still remember what I even said. So I think, yeah, it was challenging. But like I said, I think I just actually knew that it's a matter of time, and we'll find a way. And in 6 to 8 months, so once things get better, we'll be able to get these people back. So yeah.
So what did the revenues bounce back to? Like by December, January, when you offered
So
everyone a job back?
So we were at about 70% pre-COVID by then. And as a company also, FY 20 to 21, we did almost 70% of our 65% of our revenue, even though the first 6 months were almost kind of zero. So we did bounce back. We did a few things. One is that while we were already online first, we, of course, because of that, that really helped us. Because even with the stores closed, we could push the pedal on online very quickly. While if we were an offline first company, it would have taken me 1-2 years just to mentally kind of align to the online model. So we were able to do that. So we started building online very aggressively, and not just in India, internationally. So we went live on Amazon, Namshi, Zalora, across marketplace in the entire world. And we were like, if enough is not selling in India, let's ensure it's selling across the world at least. So we did, and that's something that really kind of helped us take back the revenue. And second thing, we also started pivoting the products. We were making loungewear now, like pajamas, like suits, and at
More
least
work from home
you
products,
could work at
basically.
home. Yeah, you could wear it home. And these were things that we had again not done before. And we're a fashion company. We didn't know how to, kind of, we hadn't made like, pajamas before. But then we said that's what's selling and that's what we'll make. So we started making loungewear, masks, everything that was relevant at that point for that audience. We essentially started making that. And that's what helped us get the revenue back quickly.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what today? What are you at? Like, what's your this year? What do you think? Like, what will be your ERR? Like,
Yeah, so we'll actually close the year at about 300 crores plus from a gross sales perspective. And this is something that, again, we're also moving a lot, like, a lot towards profitability, ensuring that, we're kind of, as we kind of build in the next 3-4 years, we're also super profitable, cash flow positive, all the right metrics on the balance sheet. So we're being very, very conscious of that. And while growth is still happening at 40-50% plus level, but now as a founder and given what we've seen in COVID, we really want to build a company like which is super super kind of cash flow, like I said, sustainable, and a company that can make kind of an impact. So it doesn't need to be a company that's continuously raising funding, raising capital. We've just done a small round right now. We've raised about about 5-6 million, and with that the idea is to say that can we, even if we don't raise any money after this, we should be in a good place.
wow. Okay. What are the economics of a fashion business? Like, there would be a certain revenue, there would be some amount of returns which cut down that revenue. Then there would be some cost of production, and like, just help me understand that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, so fashion essentially starts with sales, overall gross sales.
hmm,
Then there are returns, which are typically for us about early
okay.
20s at a business level.
Hmm.
So
And what's
right.
the dollar like in the market, like
Yeah, so it would, so
for
offline
returns?
business, there are no returns because
Ah,
of course
right.
people try and buy. Online would be at about
Mm-hmm.
30-35%. So net at business level, because we're almost half and half online and offline. So net it would come to say about 20% or so, 2020. So that's why we would be at company level. And then there's about 5-6% tax. So net, so about 70%, 75% of your overall sales are your net sales. And then there is cost of goods sold, which is your gross margin. This basically, cost of goods sold is essentially the product that you make and the cost of that, right? The fabric cost, the tailoring cost, etc. So that for us again remains, about 30% or maybe about 25-26% of the overall price of the product. So we put that in, which is called the first gross margin, like net if it is a gross margin. And then you have all the expenses, which would be your salaries, which would be your, rental cost, facility, marketing, all of those things, which are items before this, and then you get to EBITDA and profit.
Okay. And what is your EBITDA like? Gonna be what's it going to be like this year?
So actually, we're targeting to break even this year. So hopefully on track for that. So that's the first step. And then ideally, start kind of getting to at least a 5-6% profit from next.
What are you doing to become profitable? Are you like focusing on costs? Are you focusing on growing revenue, like, reducing returns? Like what are those levers that you can play
Yeah,
with?
yeah. So there are 2-3 things that we're doing, Akshay. One is that we have actually, for India, we've also launched our wedding wear business, which is a high ASP, high price product at about 10 to 15,000. Now here, this is a business that essentially inherently has higher margins. It's a business where people are okay to kind of pay slightly more if the product quality is top class. So this is something that we're building out, and this is a piece that's going to become almost 30% of India's business by next year this time. So this should help us kind of take up the margin profile overall. The other thing that we are doing is we're focusing on international sales a lot. So US, for example, is almost 40% of my online business. And, the more we're able to kind of sell to NRIs, again, they're not, price consciousness there is much lower than what it is in this country. So essentially that, and even the product, the quality, we're able to kind of sell higher price products to them. We're working with a lot of designers on collaborations, which do very well for the NRI market. So that is something that we're building on. And not just on D2C, even like we become large brands for Zalora, Namshi, global marketplaces. So we're essentially building that piece out. So as international becomes like a larger part of our business, maybe gets to about, again, 25-30% of the online business, the margin profile there becomes much better. So these are the two key things from a top distribution perspective. Third, of course, is that post-COVID, offline is getting back on track. And offline is a super profitable channel because
Because
discounting
there are
is
no
low.
returns,
There are
or
no returns and discounting is low because of these two things. So as offline gets back on track now, post-COVID life is kind of settling in. I mean, recession is playing a bit of a role. Sentiment's not bad, but hoping, over time, this is going to get okay. So from that perspective, as offline becomes a larger part of our business again, So again, I mean, that also starts building out. So again, the overall margin should go up. So net multiple things across the board. So to kind of start moving up the needle on the profitability.
Amazing. What is your split now, offline versus online? Or
We're
by the
half
end
and
of the
half
year?
actually. We're
Okay.
half and half. So online would be about early 50s, so 50 to 53%, and offline is 47, 48%.
And in online, how much is through your websites? How much through marketplaces?
Almost 60, 65% is through our website. So we are
That's
very
amazing.
high, heavy, high D2C focus.
That's amazing. Which would give you much richer data insights. You'd be able to retarget those customers, do
Absolutely.
upselling, and
100%. The sentiment, I mean, we're able to also understand what people are buying, why are they buying it. We're able to talk to our customers, right? And those are calls that across the company everybody makes in terms of just talking to the customers, understanding, why are they returning things, why do they like the brand, etc. So because otherwise in online you have no customer interface, right? So you can't, so if I'm only selling through Myntra, Flipkart, I have no idea who I'm selling to, where I'm selling to. Like it's a huge kind of black box. But on D2C you have so many data points. So definitely building that piece out is very helpful from getting like the right data for us.
how do you keep on track of this customer listening as the CEO? Is there like a particular report that you look at, some sort of dashboard? Or what is your way of understanding customer insights and, like keeping your ear
Yeah.
to the ground, kind of?
Yes. So actually, there are two, three things. One is that we measure NPS very, very closely. And here we do, in fact, like our NPS is not like a monthly exercise. We essentially, every time an order is delivered, post 5 days, the customer gets that email. And we have like a lot of response on that. So basically, that is the first metric to say if there is any change on that, how people are perceiving the brand, the service, the quality, all of those things. Below that email, we have a bunch of parameters to say that what is it that you like or dislike about us. And when they're able to tell us that, so this is from a purely data perspective, I'm able to get data on a weekly basis to say that how do people, is there any change? Are they liking it, not liking it, with the reasons. So this is from a data perspective. Then, teams across the board for our company talk to customers. Everybody's allocated some customers who they need to speak.
Hmm.
And then we get
These are
back to
like
one hundred.
customers who triggered a return or just like randomly selected?
Return,
Okay.
no return, doesn't matter. These are randomly selected customers. Some could be repeat customers, some could be first time customers, to understand what do they like about the brand, what do they not like, the service, the product, the fit, all of that. And this is the senior management team as well. And then we get together essentially, and then we're able to kind of say that, what are people saying about us? How do we change that, improve that, all of that. We've also once in a while commissioned reports from people like Netseer, all of that, to speak to the customer and come back to us with, detailed findings on what they think about the brand and, improvement areas. So across the board, bunch of things are done. But this is something that I feel we need to do a lot more of, because I think the more we know the customer, the better we'll be. And very conscious effort now to do more of this.
Yeah. What are the things you're doing on social media? Like, because social media is also like a powerful way for both like marketing and listening to customers.
Yeah, so social media, we're doing like so we were actually amongst the early ones to work with influencers in the country. And we started doing this about 5 years back when there was a very new culture in India. So for us, for fashion, like influencer marketing is huge. And that's
Who are
something
the
that we do.
influencers in the fashion space? Like anybody I
So
would have
somebody
heard
like,
of?
I don't know if you would have heard of them, but say
Uh-huh.
somebody like a Masumina Wala, Komal Pandey,
Okay.
Kritika Khurana. So some of these, people, they have followers in millions, and they're also very
These are like
specific followers.
Instagrammers.
Instagrammers mostly, and then they also have YouTube presence. So essentially Instagram and YouTube. So basically, so we're working with, and we typically work with 200 to 300 influencers in a month. So essentially,
Wow.
so work with a lot of them. They make content for us. So that is a huge part of our social media strategy, where, they, through their own Instagram and our Facebook, Instagram, etc., we're kind of pushing out that content. We
That also must be the reason why you have such a high direct like sales on your own website, because
100%,
this
100%, because
influencer marketing would be
that
right.
traffic is getting diverted to the website. Absolutely. So that's one. And the second thing that we do is we also talk, like we have like amazing women in our office, in our sales teams, etc. Right. So we do a lot of like real women series where people in our office, talk about our product, they wear the product, we do like when they're going out, they talk about it. So a lot of, so one is, you work with celebrities or influencers, and the second is work with people who are wearing your product, whether they're employees or consumers, customers, and we essentially work with a lot of them. So a lot of the content on our social media will be, you'll see there'll be women from our office, which is amazing, right? So we don't need to go, and they they're people who love the brand, and there's nobody who can better kind of advocate than them. So that is the other thing that we do. So these two, three things besides the regular social media, we do a lot of giveaways. That's something that does well for us. So besides the regular things, but just working with this bunch, I think people who are our users, that really helps. We also get, actually a lot because India, especially as a brand, because it's a festive wear brand, people love sharing pictures, right? If I'm wearing something at a wedding or for Diwali, I would love to share that picture in terms of how it's kind of, because India is about celebrations and joy and about kind of bringing people together. So I think so from that perspective, I think a lot of our customers share their pictures when they've worn India. This could be for something as beautiful as a baby shower. It could be for and this is across the world now because we have such a large NRI base. So I get pictures from Washington and Boston and UK and so we do put out a lot of customer pictures as well, saying that this is what it looks like in real life. And I think more than the product, it's also the sentiment, right? Because India's born at times when it's always an emotion, right? Because you're wearing it for a festivity and you're kind of emotional about it. So it's a beautiful way of kind of putting that together.
Amazing. You get customers to like tag you or like use a
Yes.
particular hashtag or like
Tag us, send us pictures. We are all forms of communication. Yeah.
what are some of those metrics which only an insider would know that you track? I mean, so for example, one metric in a lot of startups, I don't know if it's relevant or not, is that CAC to LTV, like, customer acquisition cost versus the long-term value. What are some of those metrics for your business? Like,
So I think actually, so LTV, CAC, all of these things, all startups would be measuring at the typical finance metrics, marketing metrics actually. So this would all be. I mean, personally, I think these are the two, three things that are important for me, for this business. One is what is the repeat rate looking like, right? So if are my consumers coming back? Because typically, from a life cycle perspective, for both travel in India, you can wear those products for at least 10 years of your life. So if they're not coming back within a year, at least three times, we're losing them out somewhere in the journey, which means they don't like the product. So that for us as a business, for me as a founder, is a metric that really needs to be kind of tracked. And um, only challenge in that is because we are also available through third party marketplaces. We don't always have the data to map it across the consumer across the board. But for our D2C, our EBOs, for all our direct channels, we're able to say how many people are coming back. And if they're not, we also talk to them to check why they're not. So I think so that is basically the first thing which is super, super critical for
and
our
how do
business.
you track offline if they're coming back? Like, you have some loyalty card or something like that to
No, we
track?
have our own data. Actually, we have all the systems have been inbuilt. They're built by us. So if my
Hmm.
customer's coming back, I'm able to we know that it's the second time customer, it's a third time customer, etc.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we
Okay.
have
Like
those
at
things
the
going.
time of billing, you take their phone number or something like
We
that.
have their phone numbers.
Yes.
That's correct. We have their phone number. That's a compulsory input. So that's something that we have. And we're able to track that. So essentially that would be one super important metric for us on repeat. The other thing that's very, very important for us is on returns, right? Which is to say that, why are 35% people who buying my product returning it? Which is that either the size is not right, the fabric is not right, or the image is not right. And then collecting this data and kind of being on top to say that how can we reduce this over time? Because if you can reduce returns in a fashion business by 10%, you will change the company's life in a way the P&L is going to now look very different. So essentially that. So these are the two things that are very, I mean, besides the regular finance and marketing metric, these are the two things that are super important for our business.
And what is your CAC to LTV ratio? Is that relevant also in your business?
Yeah, it's relevant. It's
Hmm.
relevant. The only thing about us, like I said, is my D2C is only about 30% of my business, which means overall business, which means 70% of my customers are going to other places to buy, and I can only track CAC to LTV for D2C, right? So even for that, it's more than three times over like an 18 to 24-month period. So it's still looking good. But having said that, it's just for this part. So if that customer is second, then going to Mintra, and then going to my to lifestyle, and then going to Shopper, I have no way of tracking the journey. So it's more relevant for at least for business that have at least 70-80% D2C. But even for us, like I said, still looks good.
Okay. So I noticed in your funding journey that you've been taking debt on a consistent basis. Uh, Help me understand, if I'm a founder, what is my way of thinking about when should I take equity, when should I take debt?
Yeah. So I think, besides like basic equity debt metrics are to say that if your business can afford interest and if your business is at a stage where the risk factor is low, then debt is the better option. right? Because you don't want to give up, because equity is always going to be much more expensive. So debt, even at higher prices, which is at 14-15% interest, which is where most startups would end, that's also better than giving equity, because the cost of equity is definitely more than 14-15%. So I think 100% I would say it's
When you say low risk, it means you have a predictable monthly revenue
predictable
cycle.
monthly revenue. Absolutely. Because the thing about debt is that you make monthly repayments, right? So if your business, so for us, for example, because we have 500 stores, we have an online business, the difference would be, we'll do 80% or 90%. You'll still do that much of your target. It's not like you'll do 10%. Right? But if it's a business where there is huge variability or variance in revenues, that becomes very expensive. Because if you can't pay for 2 months, then your business could potentially become bankrupt. So from that perspective, I would say that any business that's past the basic risk stage and, like I said, can afford to kind of pay back the interest, that is a better option. The first few years, I would always say, if you can raise equity, because it's money in the bank without any obligation to pay out. And the founder can really focus on using the money to build the business, as opposed to using the money in the short term to kind of, and then having the pressure of paying back in 18 months or 24 months. So I think that would be the key kind of difference. First few years, essentially take equity, build it out to a certain base, let the risk level in the business be low, and then start building with debt, because then your equity is also becoming more and more expensive by then.
So why did you take this 5 million equity round just now?
So actually, we essentially to build out our whole wedding wear space. We're building out India's luxe range. So a lot of that essentially will require money. It will require inventory. It will require distribution across the board. So for that, we wanted to build that out aggressively. So this round is primarily for that.
So basically for like a one-time cash burn, it's better to take equity. And when it's money for funding business as usual stuff, then debt is better.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I think more than one time, I think for, if equity for not even cash burn, if you feel that, you want to, predictability is low and also the business is loss making, which means paying interest is an add-on burden on the business, then equity is much better. If the business has or will potentially start generating money in the short term, and like I said, risk is low because revenue stability is high, then debt is definitely the better option.
Okay, amazing. So my last question to you, is there any advice you want to give to aspiring founders?
Yeah, I would just say, Akshay, that, like, if you have an idea, go and do it. Because, I have, over the last 10 years, I think, heard at least, if not more, like 100 great ideas. And then when I check with the person who's told me the idea after a few months, oh, what happened to it? And they said that, oh, we weren't quite sure. It's difficult at this point because I have kids, the baggage. And I always tell them, if you can't do it now, it'll only get harder, right? It'll only get harder. So just like, you have an idea, and even if that idea is not fleshed out, even if that thought is there, you want to do something, just go and do it. Because, what would you lose, right? Actually, you lose 2 years of your working life, 3 years by when you probably realize it's not working in worst case scenario. But you would have at least kind of done it, right? And I mean, maybe when you're 60, 70, you'll be like, I at least tried. As opposed to being like, oh, I had a great idea and I never tried. So that's what I mean. It's cliche, but that's what I would say. Like, you think of something, just go and do it. Like, I would not change anything about the last 10 years. And they've been difficult years. There's been lots of ups and downs, but I would not take anything back. And that's what I would say. Like, take that chance and go and do it. And if it doesn't happen, so be it. But nobody ever regrets being an entrepreneur. I've not heard it from anyone.
And that brings us to the end of this conversation. I want to ask you for a favor now. Did you like listening to this show? I'd love to hear your feedback about it. Do you have your own startup ideas? I'd love to hear them. Do you have questions for any of the guests that you heard about in this show? I'd love to get your questions and pass them on to the guests. Write to me at ad@thepodium.in. That's ad@thepodium.in.